Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our next session, the Agentic AI Developer, deep dive into the GitHub GH-600 certification. My name is Anna. I'll be your producer for this session. I'm an event planner for Reactor, joining you from Redmond, Washington. Before we start, I do have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. Keep an eye on that chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our presenter to answer live. Our session is being recorded. It will be available to view on demand right here on the Reactor channel. With that, I'd love to turn it over to our speaker for today. Ari, thank you so much for joining.
Hey, everyone. Great to see everyone. I know why everyone is here. It's for the discount code. No, I'm just kidding. We'll save that to the very end so everyone can find out more about our GH-600 developing an agentic AI systems exam, which is persona-based and really towards a GitHub certification in agentic AI developer. My name is Ari Levigny. I'm a senior developer advocate with GitHub. And I'm going to walk through the exam, the domains, the different percentages of each domain. We also have some great links there for the study guide, as well as some Microsoft Learn modules that the team has developed. I have put some slides together to kind of show you visually where we're at with the exam and what we have. We have these 6 domains, and domain 1 is more of kind of the foundations and the architecture. 15 to 20% of the exam is focused in on that. Managing the memory a little bit less, 10 to 15%. Really, the short term and the long term memory that agents and Copilot uses to evaluate, and how you kind of how the different context windows for those are set up. And really the systemic, or I would say the real reference, or the hardened references, is the GitHub platform of your issues and your pull requests and things like that. But we'll get into that as well. Sorry, I skipped the domain 2, the implementing the tools. So like using your MCP, your tools, edit, reading, the different GitHub integrated, and execution, obviously. We'll talk about those as well. And then performance and evaluation and tuning. There's a lot about kind of this context rot kind of concept of like when your window maybe is going away, your context window has too much information in it, and the models are having trouble evaluating that and kind of drifting away from your main goal. So those are things on the exam that you'll also want to consider. I really love domain 5 because it's around like orchestration of agents, and the coordination of those. Actually if you were here 2 weeks ago, I did, or was it a week ago? I'm already losing track of time. Actually, 2 weeks ago, it was the 14th, I think. I did a good walkthrough of orchestration of multiple agents and building your own, your team of agents to do an implementation, planning, the orchestrator kind of running everything, but then having the planner to do the reading and coming up with your overall plan, an implementation or coder agent and a design agent. And we walk through some of that. That's actually on demand if you wanted to go watch that. And then last but not least, that every company, and I think people gravitate towards when it comes to the security or the governance, is very important. And as you can see, the different percentages here, I would say, these 15 to 20% domains, and obviously the tool implementation, like that's the bulk of this exam. Your managing memory and the governance are the smaller percentages, as you can see in this overall view of the exam. By the way, I also want to say, in case it's not clear, the exam is in beta right now. So that's also why we don't have a lot of practice exams available. But those will come out once we GA. That practice exams will become available for this, so people can kind of, test their knowledge against that before they actually go and immerse themselves in the exam itself. All right, everyone's signed up for the exam. I see. How the exam will, yeah. We'll definitely get into that. Uh, I honestly have not taken the exam yet. I will be completely transparent and honest with you folks. I have been actually going through the materials, I've been walking through the Microsoft Learn modules, which I'll share with you. I do plan to take it. I've been a little bit busy with a lot of other things, but I definitely plan to take it. What I love about this exam too, and the certification overall, a lot of our certs have been kind of product based, as you've seen, like Copilot, the GitHub Copilot or GitHub Actions or the GAS exam or foundational, as well as, I think, am I missing it? Oh, and then the GitHub admin, of course, which focuses on administration. What I love that this is more like persona based, right? And we're in this world of really, a lot of companies and organizations are looking for their development community to gravitate towards, writing code or maybe even pair programming with something like Copilot, to more of now an agentic AI developer, that kind of persona, and really not just working hand in hand with Copilot or with some type of AI assisted coder, but really kind of delegating tasks and determining like a plan of how you're going to do that. And I think this exam gets to that point. And with that, let's dive into some of the domains. And so domain one really is preparing the agent architecture. What I find, what I do in a big project is I develop a plan. And you can use Copilot to develop that plan. You can write a custom agent that's a planner agent. And that's what I actually covered a couple weeks ago. You can check out that on demand, that Reactor series. All resources prepared for the exam. Yep, they're delivered in the inbox. I wish everyone who's taking the exam though, good luck. We'll also get into the study guide too, but so for domain one, then your state, which is, like I said, like what keeps the ultimate state that the agents and Copilot can check against is your issues and your pull requests. The progress is seeing those commits happen, and then the validation. Like normally with anything in our workflow, we want to validate, we want to have status checks there, and that's what our actions do. But that also gives information to the agents and to Copilot to understand, like, was our code accurate? Was it successful? Do we have the right tests in place? Do we need to add for additional tests? So, we plan, we act, we evaluate, we run the required checks, we gather that evidence, we put that back into the plan. It's that kind of cyclical role. So keep that in mind when you're taking the exam. So what it says here: evaluate the work by the standards of the workflow, not by the novelty of the author. The agent's purpose is, really the humans and policy accept. The agents propose things, but as humans and the policy, or maybe you have rule sets on your repo or your organization, those are what's going to determine what gets merged in and what gets accepted as code that is ready for production or ready to be deployed, right? So that validation step, and I always say this in all of my talks when I talk about AI and coding and agentic workflows, is that, like, it's a trust but verify, right? Like, we want to delegate and trust the agents to do what we want them to do, but ultimately we're there to kind of have that peer review, may have other of our peers, our real human peers, review those. We also have the ability to have Copilot review itself, which I do all the time. I always like that second pair of eyes when I'm reviewing stuff. So that's what domain one here is going to cover. Very foundational, very like planning of your agent architecture of what you're doing. When we get into domain two, this is where we get into the different tools, the execution context. contains the GitHub agent, the GitHub actions, the environment, and there's certain restrictions bounded by the branches and the workflow scopes that we run as part of pull requests. Most folks here that I think are on this call are familiar with GitHub and the workflow of using pull requests, using issues, and so on and so forth. Security filter of a loud list of what maybe registries, MCP registries we use, and allowing what MCP servers that we allow as part of those registries. That's definitely more administrative, but as an overall, you want to consider that in your organization when you are building your projects and your code, that you're limiting the scope of what you're exposing to those agents. And we'll get into that more of the governance domain that's at the end. But again, capability boundary, restricting, broad wildcards. Like, I think the practices we use with our own code base when we work with our peers and we work with other developers is the same principles we want to apply with our agents. That doesn't change. Most folks should be familiar with Model Context Protocol, MCP servers, and it's a standardized way, for the tool discovery requests and results that the AI can talk to in the different third-party interfaces. Obviously, GitHub has one. Microsoft Learn has their own MCP server. Playwright, Context 7. Like, these are some that I use pretty regularly in the work that I do. There's plenty out there to choose from. But I think what you want to evaluate too when you're taking or you're looking at this exam is, what would be the least amount of, least privileges or least permissions I want to give. And that's going to come into play in the exam of MCP servers that we allow and what ability we allow them to run or request information. I'm going to walk through the materials and I'll get into that once we go through the deck. I wanted to kind of just go over the overview of domains, and then we'll get into the actual Microsoft Learn modules that correspond to those domains. And I think the links have been shared, but I'll share them again too, just in case. Again, to external tools or any APIs we use. For planning, we want to be in a read-only mode. Like all of my agents, when I'm doing planning, they're just read, right? I don't need to write or change any code. I'm really planning of what my overall implementation plan is going to look like, and really kind of bouncing those ideas and refining it, maybe even before I give it to the implementation tools for execution. When they say execution agents, this would be an example of a coder agent or a design agent. In my talk that I did a couple weeks ago, my coder, had the ability to make changes to my code base. So did the designer. They worked in parallel to implement my plan accordingly for the front end design, as well as the back end or coding part that needed to be done. And I gave that ability to do that. But obviously you want to restrict roles. Maybe when you define your custom agents, you're even putting some of that context in the markdown files for that agent to understand. So that's really kind of also speaks to a little bit of the governance. How much prior knowledge of GitHub actions apply to the exam? I would say be familiar with GitHub actions. I don't think you need a deep understanding of GitHub actions. You probably want to do any to prepare for the exam. I would say look at anything that touches that agents touch actions. So with maybe evaluating the workflow or fixing workflows or explaining maybe an error in the workflow, those are the types of things that you might want to understand when it comes to actions. I don't think you need to know all the YAML or details of every action or the different, key value pairs that's in a YAML file to use for the different actions, like the runs on and things like that. It's obviously always great to have a high level knowledge of that, but I don't think to go deep into detail. Need practical experience developing GH agents before taking the exam. It does not hurt to have that. I would recommend doing that. I would say if I don't know if Anna, if you could find my on demand for agent orchestration and post that link, the YouTube video, I would really appreciate that. But I think that's a good guide overview of what you would need to know for agent and using agents, developing them. It's really basic. It's not super detailed and getting into a specific project type. But definitely, I think some knowledge or ability to understand that. And in the modules that I'm going to share with you here, we have that. So let's keep going through this. Domain 3 is where we get into more of the memory management. Oh, awesome. That's the event. Yeah. Thanks, Anna, for putting that in there. So if you want to learn more about agent orchestration, I did that live event. It's got some really great information in there of an orchestrator agent that kind of coordinates everything with the other agents. It's got a planner, a coder, and a designer. Also shows the different models I use there. So definitely take a look at that one. Domain 3, again, Matt, is focused on the managed memory state. Everything that the agent's doing is pretty ephemeral. It's using the state persistence timeline of the GitHub issues, the pull requests as the anchor, the commits along the way, and the artifacts that were produced as part of the workflows. Log expiration, looking through the logs of any long-term running, workflows that were part of a PR, and then synthesizing that memory. To resume work, agents don't start over. They really read the PR, the check commits. I notice when I'm doing that on the CLI with GitHub Copilot, or when I'm deploying or I'm handing that off to an agent or delegating to an agent, it's using my repository, and it kind of has that full history, right? Issues, pull requests, commits, workflows that have run. Those are all contexts that the agents and Copilot can use to really determine what was already done, to have that history, to know what to do next. You may want to clean some of those up, but I think having an overall picture for your repository so it knows some of the changes that were made makes your tasks and what your agents do a lot easier, so that you're not starting over from scratch. That's why I think our GitHub platform is so powerful. Deployment or orchestration, because it can just look at those stateful artifacts, or I should say stateful components like your issues and your pull requests, to know exactly how to take action next, especially if you already tried something and it was unsuccessful, or maybe you committed something that was reverted. It's going to know that and then realize, like, we've already gone down this path, so I'm not going to do that again. What's another path we can go down? So that's really what this domain 3 is about, is that managed memory state. And again, the state's persistent timeline of our platform and the different mechanisms like issues and pull requests and commits and artifacts. Domain 3 is perform, evaluation, and tuning. So, observe failure detection, quantitative automated scan output, check for failures. I know, when I'm doing some of my work, I have the agent look at that of what came out of my workflows to determine, my errors and, how we can do things better, or how we can then maybe go a different route, identify the root causes of issues, observing those failures, inputs of the logs, the traces, going back to your plan. I also find myself sometimes, and this is, I think, important for the exam as well, that you create a planning document, a markdown file that can come from a planning agent, or just working with Copilot side by side. And maybe you're updating that plan as you go. I have my agent, and when I'm on the Copilot CLI, constantly kind of do those checkpoints where it understands I got to update the plan because we're changing direction, or maybe we have more information that we want to put in the plan and evaluate that. So that's really what this domain 4 is about, is performing that evaluation and then tuning it to making the course corrections, and then coming back around to the plan and implementing it, or I should say adding it to the plan, not implementing it. This talks to that orchestration piece that I already kind of talked about, dependency agents. I did a even a week before that one. So I guess at this point, it's been 3 weeks since I've done that Reactor series on agentic workflows, but lock files, links for the associated learn modules. Yeah. And yeah, so I think you have the links for the learn modules. They'll be in there as well. But the dependency agent dependency agent allowing, the allowed paths of what files it could be used, refining agent, modifies application behavior in isolated branch, validation outcomes, security agent. And we'll get into that in some of the modules too. You can control all of this too through the code owners file. If those aren't familiar with, we'll talk about that in the individual modules there. And when domain 6 is when we get into the governance and kind of guardrails that we want to implement. This kind of funnel of, least privileges, as I said, execution. So you got to understand, like, what does least privilege mean? So that's going to be important for the exam. The agent operates in isolated branches with tightly scoped workflow permissions, branch policies, rule sets. So those are, if you're not familiar with rule sets, I would learn about that, read up on that. Required scans or code QL scans, any policy violations or things like that. Human in the loop, the code owner's file. So repositories, you can have a code owner's file in the .github directory or in the root of your repository, but that also then tells what agents can touch what files per se, or what humans own the review of something as well. Environment deployment gates. So before we deploy anything, there's several touch, before we touch those production environments, approves required before the agent's artifacts can touch any production. So we're observability, traceability, and audible contribution is what we want to make sure the agent is bound by. This is not new, obviously, to agents. This is how we should function with our peers and that are also human developers. But I think this is exactly what, is going to be covered in this domain when we talk about governance and implementation guardrails. And that said, this is, again, is the percentages. I wanted to show this is kind of what the study guide is going to go into. I know the study guide was already put on our, let me just find, yeah. So if we go to our study guide, which, oh, thanks, perfect. Thank you for putting the link in for me, Anna. Oh, Anna's always on top of it. But that's the link to the study guide that will go into these different areas that I kind of briefly overviewed in these slides. We'll dig into each of the Microsoft modules that kind of correspond, that go deeper. But again, prepare the agent architecture, and that's the foundation one, which is a 15 to 20% of the exam. Implement tool use. That's a bit higher because you're going to use that a lot in what you're coding on a day in, day out basis, and what you're having the agent tools it has access to, MCP servers and so on and so forth. The state of the memory is a little bit less there. And then the performance evaluation and tuning is like, I have a part 2 of that. Those are kind of coupled together in a way. The multi-agent orchestration, I love that part. Really good to learn that, not just for your exam. Like, I think we take certification sometimes and we want to check that box and show our employers and share with our peers. But I think that's really something to hone in on when you're architecting your own agents for your software projects. That's something really to learn. And I would also say the governance and guardrails as well. The governance, guardrails and operations, which is a 10 to 15% of the exam. Excuse me. So that's my slides. If we, I know Anna already shared, and it's in the description for the different Microsoft Learn modules. I'm going to talk and walk through these real quickly. I walk through them myself. There's a knowledge check in each one of these. Yeah, so let's get into like kind of it tells you what the prerequisites are for these. And really, as folks have been asking questions of like, do I need to know this for the exam? Do I need to know that? The Microsoft Learn modules, not just the individual units that are kind of outlined here, but make sure you understand the prereqs, right? So before you even get into those modules, maybe you want to take some of these prereqs to understand example of reviews, the code owner's file, branch protection, rule sets. Really, this is part of the overall software development lifecycle that you want to do and learn and understand fluently, because that will be part of the exam. It may not be like explicitly called out in these units, but it definitely translates into what you're going to have to know on the exam. So again, defining that agent AI lifecycle, really good picture of what that looks like here in the individual Microsoft Learn modules. The team did a good job of putting these together. Assist versus agent. When we talk about Copilot and peer programming, right, we're being assisted, whereas agent, we're kind of delegating that to the agent to handle some of those tasks. And you want to keep that in mind. Assistant versus agent, how agent behavior appears in GitHub, branches and commits, pull requests, what is being proposed. Also reviewing. We have a agent that reviews our code that we can ask in our pull request to review that. That is an agent that's running in the background to do that tasks. I focused on Microsoft Learn, hands-on GitHub Copilot and real-world scenarios, understanding agent behavior and using a branch and PR made. Yeah, that's 100% the right way to go. I would continue. Andred Batista 2577. I definitely I agree with you. Really understanding that will help you pass this exam. Like I would say, not just doing things in reading these modules, but doing stuff in practice. If I had to, I'm going to selfishly plug our some of our skills that we have. I'm going to put this link in the chat too here in the comments. This is our overall, like for all our Copilot ones, a couple of new skills that we're releasing actually at the end of this month that I did my my Reactor series on. And let me share those too. I'll put those in here. But these are good ones to help you with your study for the exam. What I like about our GitHub skills, Microsoft Learn modules are great, right? Everyone learns differently. We want to meet people where they are. That's what GitHub Learn, what we do, is about. But it's key, right? Reading and videos are great, but sometimes that hands-on practice really drives the point home and helps the learning even better. Practice exams are great, but stuff like this, like getting hands-on with these different like hands-on skills where you could run in your own GitHub under your GitHub username handle and walk through these yourselves are really key. I'll also share the agent one that has the agent orchestration. Let's see, orchestration. This is another good one. I highly recommend these as well. These are the two that also kind of correspond to the exam. We probably will add them in several Microsoft Learn modules. We usually do add some of our GitHub skills in there. And obviously this last one will get added to the orchestration domain 5 that will correspond to that one. But I wanted to share these with you. Obviously the exam's in beta, so we're still flushing out. Some of this content may get updated. So I figured I'd share directly the GitHub skills that correspond to those as well. Yeah, so we're in the foundations one, different examples, the defining the life cycle, explaining, how we act, that kind of visual that I showed you. Every one of these units has a nice preamble to tell you what you'll learn, what each of these mean. And you can go into detail in them. These are great studies. If those are familiar, like with code scanning, for example, of what a serif upload is, like that's stuff that you'll have to know for the exam and you should be aware of. At least the secret scanning or the code scanning, like understanding what that is and how that's part of checks in your workflow. If you're using GitHub today, you're probably already been exposed to those. You may already have your certs for GitHub Actions, Copilot, Admin, Foundations, Gas, etc. Right? Like if you have those are great foundations for this exam that lead you to that overall to getting your GH-600 certification. Let's see. So we did 3, right? Is this, yeah, unit 3. Describing the system of record and the control plane. Again, that code owner's file, pull requests. These are the different services for that control plane. Stay tuned until the end. Yeah, please stay tuned to the end because there's going to be a giveaway code. Everyone loves discounts. I know I do. But again, rule sets and branch protection. The GitHub platform in general has done a great job of kind of the policy engine that drives, making sure we're not merging, GitHub or merging code that's not ready, right? And the rule sets are example of that. The branch protection that you can build into a rule set, having Copilot automatically review your code or your pull requests. That's something I have on all of my repositories that if I make changes, Copilot's there to review them and kind of like give me a heads up. Like you might want to look at this as maybe commit a change that it's recommending, or maybe you're going to delegate that to an agent to then go do that and then propose a change, which then the rule sets can, validate, and you as a human and your peers can validate as well, right? So this is really understanding that environment and that workflow. Good information in these units that help prepare for the exam. Identify responsibilities, risks, and anti-patterns and traceability needs. That's for this first, again, this first unit, this first module here. Like I said, each one of these has a nice little, knowledge check. I already ran through these. That's why mine's complete. But I don't want to give the answers on this. I want to let you kind of try these out, go through the unit, understand before you get to the end of learning each of the units, before you get to the knowledge check. And then as all of these modules have a nice summary at the end to kind of like review what you learned, what the takeaways are. And those are the things that you can study on for the exam, So what's also great too is in the summaries, I highly recommend if you're not sure about something like the serif file or GitHub token or code owners, there's links at the end here and I'm pretty sure these probably just go to documents. Yeah, goes to our GitHub docs, right? So if you want to get a little bit more detail on what these files are, where they're located, what they apply to, and dig a little deeper to prepare for the exam, you can do that. And all of these are supplied to you at the end of each of the modules. So that covers that. And then this is like the foundation, right? This is part 1 of 2. And then let's see. Yeah. So this gets into the agent architecture and SDLC integration. And we have all those units again if you just wanted to kind of get a look at what you're going to be getting yourself into each of these modules, just come down from the main page and you can see like all of the different units, approximately how long it would take for each one. I think we default to 5 minutes for each, but feel free, mileage may vary as you go through them. So keep that in mind. But again, this really lays out, the different areas. So mapping your agent responsibilities, right? I think we talked about that, of your planning, your implementation, your validation, your deployment. That may play into your agent orchestration as well. So they kind of go hand in hand there, I feel like, as well. What kind of every time you use an agent, it's going to create its own branch. It's not going to, you could specify that to make sure that you're creating your own branch as part of that. open or update a PR, like that could be part of how you define your agents. And that's going to be on the exam of like, should you have your agent merge directly into main? Probably not, right? You're going to want to have that agent create its own branch, propose a PR maybe as part of the whole workflow that you can review, and you can have Copilot review alongside. Review any of the checks that have run, the artifacts that have been generated to make sure they're right. If there's failures, to have the agent iterate on them. And really, the deployment is always going to be restricted. Approvals for sensitive actions. So that's stuff that is really kind of, you want to review as a human, and maybe Copilot help you review alongside of you as well as another human peer. But you're going to be the gate there. I normally do not let the agent do all of that on its own without reviewing what it's doing. Unless it's a throwaway project and something that I'm testing, I'm just playing around with something. But in our real projects that we do, our software development projects we do, in our normal day-to-day work as a developer, we want to verify that, a trust but verify, like I always say. Practical examples in the Git, a dependency remediation agent is scoped to implementation. The agent is vulnerable. So good references here and to understand of like what you'd want to do in this case of a practical example. Success inputs and outputs, success criteria, defining what those are. We have some good YAML. You're talking about, do you have to know GitHub Actions? It's probably good to understand the basics of GitHub Actions, and because they're kind of defined here, like a CodeQL action here to, init and then analyzed, understanding what that means or checking out the code. Like this is just a standard boilerplate kind of like GitHub Action you're probably going to do in a lot of your workflows in general. Let's see. Separate planning, reasoning and execution. Examples of implementing PR governance with templates, checks, code owners. Again, back to the code owners. I think this might be a bug in which I'm going to hand back to our team. Actually, I'm going to copy and paste this one. I noticed this when I was walking through it that it's missing some of this. I don't know what actually gets copied here. Let me see if that's, yeah, it doesn't, it just copies a down arrow. So I think that's a bug. So excuse that. Again, we always iterate and are updating. So I'll pass this along to the team as well. I noticed that when I was walking through it. Some of these other ones though, the implementation PR, unless, the whole idea is to have down arrows. I don't think so. So this is more the PR template that requires a structured plan. You could honestly use this as your pull request template. You could create an agentic workflow, and the GitHub skill that I shared with you and the on-demand Microsoft Reactor series that I did on that talks about how you can create, instead of these rigid GitHub Actions workflows, an agentic workflow that you're using an agent alongside of GitHub Actions to really generate what you want to do and be kind of flexible. And when you're generating those, usually with GitHub Actions, right, if you don't have the syntax right or something's off, it's going to throw an error and not run correctly. You could always have Copilot review that with you, but with agentic workflows, it makes you describe your whole workflow of what you want to do with your repository maintenance, or your CI/CD in a markdown file. And then the agentic workflow is generated for you, kind of compile that and check that into your code base. That's all covered. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that here. That's all covered in that Reactor series I did on agentic workflows that read the room. For those folks, as a side note, that are going to Microsoft Build, I'm going to be there actually doing a demo session on that. I'm going to plug that as well with folks. Let me just find the I'm going to find the if you're attending virtually or you're attending in person, I believe the session is recorded. When we're at Microsoft Build, it's on June 2nd, 2:40 Pacific time in the afternoon there at the Fort Mason in the Gateway Pavilion, I believe. But if you want more detail, me and my peer Alejandro are going to be walking through agentic workflows. Kind of matches up with what this unit covers here. Probably maybe we'll add the skill here. But if those folks are, you can register for the demo session and really we'll walk through hands-on of how to walk through that skill and how we do it. We have only 25 minutes, so obviously we're condensed. Part 2 of developing agentic AI systems on Microsoft Learn, an idea when it releases. Part 2. I'm not sure when that is released. Maybe Anna knows. I don't know when we're going to be doing that. I'm not as familiar with that. Systems on Microsoft Learn. Or do you mean for the part 2 of the one module? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm not clear. Maybe you could clarify that question. But again, selfless plug there on. Yeah, we're not sure when we'll be doing that. I mean, we'll probably do some follow-ups too once the exam GAs on digging a little deeper. We'll probably have some Microsoft Learn modules that have been updated. We may add some more units to those modules. So stay tuned for that. We'll hopefully have some practice exams ready to go. Beta, I liked it. My recommendation is to practice the different topics such as hooks, learn why they are important and their types. Great recommendation. Yes. Yeah, learn hooks. Learn, what triggers workflows as well, what your agent can do to trigger a workflow or what it's going to be triggered on as well. Those are things or topics to to learn. Thank you, Luis, for that. I think that's awesome. But again, here in the Microsoft Learn module, gives you an example of these workflows. Like in this case, we're going to do a pull request when it's to the main branch. We're going to run this workflow. Code owners file. Code owners file not only has like teams or people, but certain teams that are there to basically govern or gate specific areas in your repository. Like example of like /security /infra. The core team has access to start everything to review all of that. For this exam, you can't access Microsoft Learn. It is available for other exams such as AI 200. Yeah, that is true. That you cannot access that. Thank you. Good point. Thanks again, Luis. This is key to be wary of execution without validation. If an agent can bypass required checks or merge without reviews, the architecture loses its primary safety mechanisms. That's something also about agentic workflows that I cover in that use case. Everything is sandboxed and doesn't allow the agent to go wild and do things outside of kind of a boundary or security, kind of security gating. There's more details on that. There's like, I think about 5 layers of security that are part of agentic workflows that allow that. After passing the beta exam, we need to write the official exam when it comes out? No, if you take the beta exam, it counts. You don't have to retake that. I know that every exam, though, in general, has a certain lifespan of how long it lasts. I do not know how long this one. I know in our product-based ones are about 3 years, I think. I could find out though, and we can always update and find out how long the exam is good for. I would say probably 2 to 3 years off the top of my head. But if you take the beta, you do not have to then sign up when the GA comes out to then retake it again. You're kind of grandfathered in with the beta exam. So the idea is we want to collect feedback as part of the beta to learn like questions that were maybe too ambiguous or the answers or the choices were too ambiguous to understand like which is the right answer or the selection of right answers. Like some of those questions where you have to pick 2 out of 3 or 2 out of 4 or 3 out of 4. Like that's an example of like, we want to collect that feedback and maybe make an adjustment to the GA exam. So like other people don't run into that or it's clear. So we're not going to make people retake that exam. It's more to us to get that feedback and learn GitHub, I say this all the time, is very much ship to learn. So we put products or exams out there that we feel are ready, but we want to collect that feedback to iterate and then maybe have a new release of like that feature, or in this case, a certification. All right. So I think we covered, yeah, I'll go into now the tooling and MCP part. This is these three modules are what's considered the developing an agentic AI systems part 1 of 2. Part 3, part 4, 5, and 6 are the other 3 modules. So if that maybe was the question you were asking, that's what we'll get into. I do want to spend a little bit more time on this. It's a higher percentage of the exam, but how agents interact with GitHub APIs and workflows. This is key to understanding traditional workflows versus agentic workflows. Markdown, define guardrails, and formatter. This is what a markdown of what you might define for an agent. Format defines the boundaries. The workflow is then compiled into a lock file. So agentic workflows, when I covered that and we compile it, it generates this lock file. But the source of truth is your markdown that you define, and it takes that and generates the agentic workflow that becomes the GitHub actions that run at the end of the day. And daily repository status reports, these are examples of things that you would do as part of your agentic workflows. Definitely check out that Reactor series. I don't know, Anna, if I could ask you to find that one that's on demand instead of me having to dig through it. I did it on May 7th. And that's really good to understand agentic workflows. We actually are next week going to be releasing that in public preview for agentic workflows. So it's a really good thing to understand for your work that you do in your software projects, but it also corresponds to this exam as well. And this gets into some of that detail on the, thank you so much, Anna, for adding that. Awesome. So that is the on-demand where I covered the agentic workflows. And again, I already copy and pasted the GitHub skill that corresponds to that I covered in that on-demand session. Again, hands-on practice, that's how I learn the best, is really using it and trying it out to understand the mechanisms and the feature itself. And then I can apply that to my software projects. And then I can also then get certified in an exam like this that really shows that I understand the concepts and shows like you're able to pass the exam because you understand them so well. So the key takeaway here, agents on GitHub don't operate outside the platform. They interact through the APIs and the workflows, the repository structures, the permissions you enforce. Context model, the model context protocol extends these capabilities by enabling agents in the next unit. But I would spend a lot of time on this module in particular. All of these 3 are important. The memory one that we talked about. This is the memory one that we talked about. These were the first 2. Memory is a little bit less, like I said. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. We have about 12 minutes left, and I also want to leave time for our code at the end. But walk through this for the memory. But these 4 modules here are really what make up, the first, that part 1 of 2. I'm surprised that it doesn't say that here. I know this says part 1 of 2 here for these 3. So that's kind of developing agentic AI systems, part 1 of 2. Domain 2, though, it gets a little bit confusing there, is the memory state and evaluation. Then we have the multi-agent systems and orchestration. This gets into more of the define and multi-agent responsibilities for the software development lifecycle, isolation of branches, workflows, and boundaries, permissions, and concurrency, operate reliability at scale. So when we talk like part 2 of 2 for developing agentic systems, these are the modules that you want to look at, the governance being the other one. So these three, I think, fall into that second bucket. So definitely spend time on those. Again, how agents, let me go to the tooling is very important. So spend a lot of time on this module, learn it well. This gets into the nitty gritty of that, of the tools and the MCP servers and the APIs and the agents that the agents use, and the execution environments. So I think that covers all of the modules. I think you already got shared the actual exam link as well. I will share those two links again. I know Anna's shared it several times, but why not again? I'll share it. Here's the exam itself, a nice short link to that, and then the study guide as well. We could walk through that real quick too, just to make sure people understand that. Also, the topics are these tabs: memory, multi-agent governance. Which ones do people underestimate? I would say the tools one, and the multi-agent. I would honestly, I would spend a lot of time on the tools and memory and governance. I know the memory is less of a percentage, so you probably can, you could spend time on that. It's really not a lot to take the exam before May 31st. Do I just need to sign up before May 31st for the voucher? Let me clarify on the voucher. I believe the vouchers we have, let me verify with what my good peer Alicia had sent me about the codes. I believe it's good up into the end of the month. I think you just have to sign up and with the voucher before that, but you can take it later on. Let me just find out. Let's see. Vouchers.
Hey, Ari, it's
Yeah.
Anna. It looks like from our little asterisk text here that
Yeah.
it's for the first 100 people who take the exam on or before May 31st. So I believe you will need to take the exam and not just sign up for it.
So I think that was, if that's the voucher though from the blog post, that voucher is good for that. The voucher I'm going to hand out now actually is a little bit broader than that and gives you more time and gives you more percentage off. So you're welcome to use that voucher too, but obviously you have a deadline. And let me just verify. Let me see if I could find the message from Alicia. I have here. Cool. Let's see. I know I had it somewhere written. Let me look at my notes here. I'll just look that up real quick. We still got time. I'll also just, here's the study guide too. Just the same domains that I covered and what's covered on them. That's really what the study guide is now. You can also look through other things. There's what's called a sandbox environment too, to kind of like play around what the exam environment looks like. That's separate from the exam. That's just a general sandbox, not specific to the exam. I just want to call that out. So these codes the code that I'm going to hand out is for the first 1,000 users get 50% off. And I believe, let me just find, I'm going to ask Alicia. Hopefully she's on and can respond. For Reactor. Actually, I don't think there's an expiration. I think it's the first 1,000 users is what it is. So when I hand out this code, the first 1,000 people are going to get 50% off. Once those 1,000 are used up, that's the end of it. But I think you have time. So I would get the code, use the code as soon as possible to sign up for the exam. And then you could probably schedule it whenever you want. I mean, that's the idea of it. Actually, that makes total sense. So that's what it is. Really, this doesn't have a deadline like the one that's in the blog post. The code that I had that I'm going to give you, and I guess I will. Maybe I'll just give it now so folks can jump on it. Let me just make sure I have. I just want to double check. Yeah, Reactor series, perfect, excellent. Yeah, the one that is the one that's yeah, the limit may have been hit, right? So that was part of the blog post that came out May 13th, I believe. So it was like over 2 weeks ago. So I'm sure everyone already used up the code for that. But because you guys attended this is the code that you want to use. So the first 1,000 people are going to get 50% off their exams. And then, yeah, go have at it. That doesn't mean you have to take the exam right away, right? That means you're registering, you're using the code, you're paying for the half off of your exam, but you're scheduled it. So you're locked in. That's the idea. On the study guide, there are code examples there that you can practice and will be, yep, 100%, Luis. Thanks for your help, Luis. Great comments and suggestions. I love it. I just took one at 80%. Okay. Yeah, if you already used the 80%, yeah, sorry, that code was out there. We wanted to tease the code so you learned all the content beforehand. So that's why I waited to the very end. Would that last 1 year? If you're talking about the exam, I would say if you take the exam, you don't have to retake it for at least 2 years, I believe. I think it's even longer than that. But let me actually see if I could find that out for you folks. Let me see. I'll see if at least you could get back to me on that. But the code, I think, is self-explanatory. First 1,000 people. Yeah, I believe that's right. I think it might be 60 something percent though. 65% or something like that for passing. Yeah, I think that's one of those things we may like. I don't know if it's a hard and fast on that for the beta about the voucher code. If we buy the exam, we could be back in 1 year to take it. I don't know what the scheduling, how far out it goes with Pearson of how long you could. I think if you use the voucher code, you book the exam. And I would lock it in that way. I would not that voucher code unless you use it now. I guarantee you by the end of this stream or by tomorrow, those 1,000 will be used up or they'll be close to being used up. Also come to Microsoft Build. I'm sure there might be vouchers handed out there. I'm not 100% sure of that, so don't quote me on it, but we'll definitely be talking about the exam. It says it's invalid. Let me see. Interesting. Let's see. Canvases, channels. Let me see if I can find. Pretty sure that's the code though.
Hey, Ari, we had
Yeah.
Luis pop in again, our very helpful contributor here. We have to enter the code at the checkout page after you select the date
Yeah.
and time, not at the beginning. So we do have
Yes.
somebody who said it was invalid, who says it is working now.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I scrambled. I was like, I think I had the right code. You got me scared there. The correct link where to use the code. Yeah. You're always going to, in any of our exams, and this one included, sorry if that was not clear, you have to put that in at checkout time. So that's when you'll have an entry for the code. There's nowhere to put it before that. It's when you go to checkout. Thank you again, Louise. Appreciate you. You've been so helpful today. At the end of the booking process, yeah, schedule the exam here. Yep. Yeah. So follow it through all the way, and then put the code in that I passed along. You guys got me scared there. I thought we had a bum code, and I was gonna have to ask Alicia what's going on, but looks like we're good. I'll also just paste the code in there again, just in case folks missed it. But we're at time. Thank you so much for all the great questions. Thank you, Louise, for your assistance in kind of clarifying some things about the exam. Good luck to everyone taking the exam. Hope you're attending Microsoft Build in person or virtually. We'd love to talk to you about the exam. Love for you to come to the demo session we're going to be doing on agentic workflows that will help you in the hands-on practice for the exam. Walk through the modules, learn, do a lot of studying beforehand. I have full faith that everyone will do well on the exam. If you study these modules, if you do the hands-on practice, I think you'll be all set. Awesome at work. Great. That's so good to hear. Thank you, Anna, also for your help as always. Everyone enjoy the rest of your day or evening, wherever you are. And thank you for the time. I hope this was useful, and good luck on the exam. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining, and thanks again to our speakers. We're always looking to improve our sessions and your experience. If you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear what you have to say. You can find our survey link on the screen or in the chat. And we'll see you at the next one.